My virtual reality. I think that what you just described, you described that in the previous episode, when you said like everything can be created and it's just a matter of, clicking and it's there. It reminds me, first of all, the part of the movie we both know, and I think everyone knows, the Matrix, where the Trinity is...
Well, Geert doesn't know it.
Not
everybody.
Almost everybody, yeah. Where Trinity with Neo are running away from Mr. Smith, and at some point they see the helicopter as the only option to run away, and the Neo is asking, oh, can you fly this thing? Yeah, just give me a moment. Yeah, I can. Let's go. And the program been uploaded with the instructions on how to steer this helicopter. So what it gives me, what this creates the idea in my head that perhaps what you experience while you sleep or lucid dream, you actually entering sort of virtual reality instead of being actually in the same reality as we are here. Because you said in the previous episode that this reality is as real as the lucid dream reality, and within lucid reality you can adjust and modify whatever you want. Within milliseconds you are somewhere else. You cannot do it here, but you can do it in the virtual reality. Don't you think that this is sort of, when we're dreaming, we're just stepping into some different realm, which is sort of pre-production environment of our production environment, which is this real? This is my sort of way of looking at the reality, more or less from the technology point of view. So I'm just trying to figure out how you see that, and if you see any kind of possibility that this might be an option, that this is pre-prod of the production system, and you can imagine whatever you want. You can upload any single program. You can mix it up with all kind of memory information in your head, and mix it up totally into something crazy. How do you see that option? I know that you will say this is possible. Obviously, everything's possible, so we know. But would you say that this is plausible?
I don't think it would be necessary. There is a big interest in the idea that this reality being a virtual reality, and if you're programming this reality as a virtual reality, then you're going to have to add in our ability to enter another program, which is the dream program, so that every virtual reality character, has also got to be able to dream and enter a sub-virtual reality, so you're going to have to put that in your programming as well. And it's always possible, it's the same word. It means that it could be so. But my understanding says, through my experience of dreaming, and not just dreaming, not just lucid dreaming either. There's different levels of lucid dreaming, and dream is the wrong word to use. It's just different experiences of other realities, apart from this one. So you can throw in astral travel, out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. You can call them all dreams if you want to, but I prefer to, well, if I call them all dreams, I've got to include this one as well. And my experience within them is that I wouldn't, if I can think something up and it already appears, I wouldn't see any point in creating a code to make it appear. Because I can sit here as a writer, I can create anything I want on paper without writing a code for it.
But it doesn't exist. It's only
it exists in that realm of the story, But it means I can imagine something, and I can imagine it in my head,
But you have to have a
and I can
consciousness
describe
mind.
it down.
You have to have a conscious mind to read it and to understand it, and then
Yeah.
to transform it into this imaginary
Yeah. And
vision.
what they imagine, what the reader imagines, it depends on how well I describe it in words. But basically, you're creating an image. It's not got any physicality about it, but it's definitely an image that is created, a visual that's created out of my imagination through words into somebody else's imagination. Now, none of that involves coding. It's just imagination.
I would say
Why would I have to bring in an in-between subset to explain what imagination is? Then we really got to get onto the subject of what is imagination then. Is it coding in a computer system, or is it something that is just consciousness? It's just there. And I choose to believe it's just there. And I don't see any point in translating that into something that really has only existed since we've had coding, digital systems. Before, people have had and having lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences since mankind was around, and hallucinations through drugs and whatever, and traumas, and people have been seeing other worlds before computer systems and digital computer systems and coding for digital computer systems was invented. Now that we're in a world that uses this, we tend to get trapped into thinking, oh, now I found the answer, it must be all digital computer systems, when it's only a new story that intersperses. I could just as much say, well, why isn't it God that created all? Why isn't it aliens that created all? And why do I have to think it's dreams, or why do I have to think it's computer systems? It's a choice. The chance of it being a computer system is as real as the chance of it being a God that creates everything. I just prefer to believe in consciousness as the ultimate system, and since consciousness can do everything with imagination, then there's no reason to put another storyline in there.
You know, I see it slightly different. Why? Because I think that consciousness might be part of simply a program, and this program is part of the environment, and the environment, computer environment, might be so sophisticated these days for us that we won't be able to distinguish it from anything else. For us, whatever is created is real, so that means it's your environment, so that's real.
Yeah.
And if we compare it to using your argument that that we've got computers since only some years, yes, but we have it in the shape that we have it now, which means that since 50 years we have come to this position. But if you try to imagine how the computer will look like in hundreds of years, or maybe in thousands of years, I'm pretty sure that in 10,000 of years, computer might not be having such a form, might be not existing, might be just another environment which we place something or somebody, and this creates the reality for this something or something.
And that is the plausibility of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, there's got to be the original programmer.
Correct.
And what is that reality of the original programmer? Is that also a computer program? Or is that a real physical particle reality? Or is that a consciousness reality?
Then we come to the point where we once again ask who the God is, who the source is, what the source is. Because
all you're doing with that, you've got...
I know, we just
you're just pushing it out. You're just stretching the whole story out. You've got the original thing, the original source of everything. It's got to be an intelligent system. It's not going to create all this out of nothing if it's not intelligent. It had an idea. It's got an imagination as well. Couldn't create all this without an imagination. So it's a creative consciousness with an imagination, which is the creative side of consciousness, and it's aware because it's made a choice to do this. What is that? Well, you come against a hard problem. Is that also a physical being, a physical entity, or is that just consciousness as pure existence? And then it can get into systems. It can create things, but it can't. It's not going to create a physical computer system from the word go. And if it did, it would have to create particles to create that computer system, and then learn to code before it created programs. So you basically end up with one source and one computer system. I don't see the point of going from there to here and throwing all these computer programs in the middle. It could be, but I think it would be a long way before computer systems came in, and then from there it could expand with computer systems, but at the same time as expanding with computer systems, the other worlds, the reality worlds, the consciousness worlds, they're also expanding. And you could say we're one of the computer programs. Yeah, we could be. But we could also be one of the non-computer programs.
That's correct. Mike, what I'm trying to say is that what you call consciousness might not necessarily need to be something goddess, God creation. It might be just, or it might be also God creation, but the God is not this God who we think about at the moment. What I'm trying to say is that we can go, as you said, like push one civilization and another civilization and another civilization, but they need to be at the beginning, right? And the beginning is the most difficult thing to cope with. Some people say there was a Big Bang. Scientists say there was a Big Bang, and the universe being created this way, and it's constantly enlarging and getting bigger and bigger. And at some point, it will be so big that it will crunch itself back and shrink to this very one point.
Yeah, well, that's just because what the maths say.
That's about the math.
Yeah.
But we wanted to talk about the humankind. Who are we,
yeah,
and etc.
Well,
but now we went to the God or the source.
That explains who I think we are. And you asked me who I think we are and who I think I am, which precedes who I think we are. I think I'm a dream in consciousness.
Right, but
with my own imagination.
Add up on top of that, I'm afraid that you might be not only a dream of your consciousness, but your consciousness might be also product of something or someone, or a dream of someone. So there might be an endless loop of sort of.
I try to think of it.
Realities.
It is. I try to think of it as a sort of logical consciousness system. Say you've got one consciousness, and it wants to understand what it is. It becomes aware of itself, and once it becomes aware of itself, it's got to understand who it is. So it creates an alternate, a sort of polar, so it can take a perspective from there, so it can know itself. Oh, that's who I am. Then who is this then? Well, from here you can type. Well, it doesn't answer much questions. You're just going to and fro with it, so it creates the third one. Oh, I can see I'm that, but I'm also that. And now I'm this as well. And then it needs to expand, because it can also do this. Hey, but this is fun, I can create 2 of me, 3 of me, to be able to know who I am. And then it expands into multitudes and billions and trillions. And then it not only itself, but other objects or other existences, other experiences. And it says, oh, I'm also that, I'm also that, I'm also that, I'm also that. Yeah. Because I experienced it. And so imagination, the creativity of the consciousness, the creativity of the aware consciousness grows and grows and grows. And it just becomes an expanding story of existence.
It's
and
like never-ending.
Never-ending. It cannot never end. It will expand and expand and expand. And when they talk about the universe expanding and then retracting, well, that's just one story. And maybe it does retract, maybe that doesn't, maybe that goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
And some scientists claim that there might be a number of such universes. This might be just
there
one
might
of
be.
them.
Why not?
Which is just
if
one
if
book.
you're going to create one, you can create another. And it's just one consciousness expanding out with lots of different stories forever and ever and ever. And how long it's been doing this, I don't know, since before the Big Bang. It's because maybe the Big Bang was just a new thought.
Yeah.
And so that new thought was manifested as, from our perspective, as a Big Bang. But it was just a thought. And it can go on forever and ever and ever. And somewhere down the line, you've got to explain who you are. And I have no problem, and it seems to be logic to me, that it's all consciousness, it's all just thought, and somewhere along the line, I'm here as thought, and I can have thoughts as well. It's a progression of the same system, and along with those thoughts, we can create other systems, create other realities through other systems, but even those had to be thought out first. But it just keeps it simple for me to think just in terms of consciousness. I don't need to make it any more complicated than that.
No, that's all great, but I'm looking at it once again from an environmental point of view. So if there's an environment, this environment needs to have some properties. If this has some properties, it means it's sort of structured, organized. If it's organized, structured, it means it's created, because something doesn't create itself in some specific order without a thought. So it's all created, which means that the universe needs to be created. Yeah. And if we follow that logical path, then it means that this one single point which boomed and universe being created, then all the information about what happens and what kind of planets will be created and everything needs to be stored in this one particular point. And this point needs to be point of information, because this information needs to be somehow stored over there. And then the question comes again, if the source, God, whatever we call it, wants to create this, needs to create this within some environment. It's like us. If I want to make an experiment, I create an environment within which I can perform some experiments. Yeah. Otherwise, I will have influence from external, with external factors, and etc., etc. So I sort of limit it to some specific environment, and then I know I can perform some tasks. So I'm still coming back to this point that if Source, God, this infinite entity exists since some time, I think that I guess we need to assume that it exists, and it will exist, because we cannot explain that in other words. Then it still needs to create, and creation means that you need to have some sort of code in order to create it, because I cannot understand how something can be created without a plan, and the plan needs to be written down because you need to follow some instructions. So you need to have some environment, and then those information within this environment.
But it doesn't have to be a coded information. It could just be an idea. It can be an intention. That is also a way of coding. Okay, I write a book. I've got to get from there, the beginning of the book, to there.
But you have environment already. Your book is your environment.
Yeah, the book is the environment.
So you've got physical.
Yeah, but the story that takes place in another environment that also adheres to certain laws that I decide as a writer. I decide which laws go in. I don't have to code those laws into it, and I can change them anytime I want. So this person has to go through this particular route to get to the end of the story. Mm-hmm. And I'm deciding all that. I could change that. I could turn it into a science fiction novel and make sure that this guy can actually fly and walk through walls, and that sort of thing, to make it easy to get to there. But I'm deciding it. I'm not coding it. I'm just intending it to be so. These are the laws and rules of this particular environment in my story, and that's all you have to do. You just have to intend. Well, I've got a certain amount of laws. I create a universe. In this universe, it's going to be experienced in particles, and these particles are going to be attracted to each other.
You have to define.
Yeah, you define it. That's all.
So
you don't have to code it. You just define it, because the rest is thought. The rest is imagination. It doesn't really exist. It's all imagined. It's like, I mean, a lot of physicists are theoretical physicists. They don't actually do experiments. It's all mind experiments. They come up with great answers. Well, this is what mind does. This is what consciousness does. It says, I'm inventing a universe, and in this universe, certain laws are applicable, and I'm going to follow those laws as I write that story. And eventually it's going to come out to some characters, and they can't walk through walls. They're going to experience everything as solid, because that's interesting to pursue that particular storyline and those particular experiences.
But you have to execute that in the end. So your thought is just a thought. It's an idea. It's an information. But this needs to be executed. And executed meaning that if you assume that this wooden table is, you're not going to put a hand through this. This needs to be somehow once again coded. I mean, I use this technological language, but it needs to be defined. It needs to be defined. So there must be a action and then reaction. That you cannot just simply say, it's like me creating a code, in one of the programming programs, the languages, and then leave it as it is. If I leave it as it is, it only exists in this very particular computer, and it won't be spread out. It won't be executed. It won't exist. It's just a thought. It's just a number of information accumulated in one specific place, which can be executed, and once they executed, they create something, and then you've got the effect of this creation. So what I'm still trying to pinpoint is that I understand your view, but we need to have some certain number of rules, laws, and other properties in order to have something. Otherwise, you cannot just simply say, let the water be a wine. I mean, Jesus said
you
that.
You can't, but the writer of this particular story, the creator of this, the imaginator of this particular reality, can. The only reason we can't is because that original imagination of this reality has decided that physical reality is physical reality, and it's got boundaries.
It's limited.
It's limited.
Okay, so that means that this someone is looking at this in our environment from outside.
A bigger mind, a bigger consciousness system is actually creating this and running it and experiencing it via us, and that's where the virtual reality comes in. We are virtual reality subjects for another mind to experience a limited world, a physical world.
In some particular shape, created by...
Exactly. What moved? It's still working. What moved? It's still working. What moved? It's still working.